This is Indonesia, one of the most beautiful and complicated countries in the world. Here, there are fire-breathing volcanoes, dense jungles, and beautiful beaches. It is such a unique country where more than 270 million people live across more than 17,000 islands. Yes, 17,000 islands. Indonesia is the world's largest island country, spread across more than 5,000 kilometers. It even stretches across 3 time zones, from Sumatra in the west to Papua in the east. It is the world's 4th most populated country, the largest Muslim-majority country, and one of the most ethnically and linguistically diverse places on Earth. But behind all this beauty lies a secret. How did a country spread over 17,000 islands even come into being? Who ruled here before it became a nation? And how did so many, so different islands come together into one country? And most important, how do you even govern a country spread across so many seas? To understand Indonesia's story, we must go back in history, because it is not just a country, but one of modern history's strangest experiments, an attempt to unite thousands of islands, cultures, and volcanoes into one nation. By the end of this video, you will understand why Indonesia is still united, and why in the future it might even break apart. Hundreds of years ago, these islands were the home of Asia's richest and most powerful kingdoms. For thousands of years, people lived here in the form of communities. They farmed here and traded through the seas. These islands lay between India and China, 2 powerful civilizations. That's why traders from both passed through here, sharing gold, ideas, and even religious ideologies with the local people. With time, these islands became so important that large empires began to form. One of them was the Srivijaya Kingdom in Sumatra. Around the 7th century, this kingdom became a powerful trading center, controlling sea routes and even taxing ships passing through. It became a hub of Buddhism, attracting scholars from across the world. Later, in the 13th and 14th centuries, the Majapahit Empire rose in Java. This empire spread across many islands. Majapahit was known for art, construction, and good governance. Hinduism was followed here, and it became Southeast Asia's most powerful empire of its time. But no empire lasts forever. As trade grew, new powers rose, and kingdoms began to weaken. Local leaders started fighting each other, and then came the arrival of Islam. Around the 13th century, Islam spread here through trade. Local people, impressed by the good behavior of Muslim traders, began to accept Islam. But just as things were settling, some people came from across the seas, not to trade, but to rule. At the beginning of the 15th century, ships landed on these islands. They spoke different languages, had their own flags, and carried powerful weapons. They were the Portuguese, and they were searching for something very precious: spices. At that time, in Europe, cloves, nutmeg, and black pepper were as valuable as gold, and Indonesia's Maluku Islands had them in huge quantities. These became known as the Spice Islands, and everyone wanted to control them. Soon after the Portuguese, the Dutch also arrived, not just to trade, but to rule. In 1602, the Dutch created the Dutch East India Company, the world's first and largest international company at that time. Its single goal: control the spice trade. The Dutch built forts, made deals with local rulers, and when deals failed, used force. Slowly, they pushed out the Portuguese and took over the islands. Local kingdoms were either destroyed or forced to accept Dutch rule. But the Dutch wanted more than spices. They wanted land, people, and other resources. Thus began 300 years of Dutch rule. They built the city of Batavia, today known as Jakarta. They started farming sugar, coffee, and tobacco, forcing Indonesians to work. They seized lands, collected heavy taxes, and crushed protests with full force. Still, many Indonesians did not give up. They dreamed of freedom. By the 1900s, this dream turned into a real movement. The Dutch thought everything was under their control, but a storm was coming: World War II. By 1942, Japan invaded and captured the islands. After 300 years of Dutch control, Indonesia was now under Japan. At first, Indonesians thought this was good news. Japan promised to free Asia from Europeans. But soon, reality changed. Life under Japan became harsh. People were forced to work, given only little food. The fire of independence burned stronger. Japan gave locals military training for its own use. But later, this training would help Indonesians themselves. In 1945, everything changed. The United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrendered. As Japanese forces left, Indonesian leaders saw their chance. On 17 August 1945, just 2 days after Japan's surrender, Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta declared independence. It was a brave move, but the Dutch refused to accept it. They wanted to regain control. This led to 4 years of fierce struggle, known as the Indonesian National Revolution. Indonesians resisted with weapons and diplomacy and refused to become slaves again. Finally, in 1949, under international pressure, the Dutch gave up. Indonesia was free. But gaining independence was only the beginning. Now they had to run a nation of 17,000 islands, countless ethnicities, and dozens of languages. Freedom was won, but the real challenge was keeping everyone united. Indonesia is not just one country or a few provinces. It is a giant puzzle of more than 17,000 islands, spread across over 5,000 kilometers. Some islands are very large and full of people, like the island of Java, where almost half of Indonesia's population lives, around 140 million people. Similarly, Sumatra, Sulawesi, and Kalimantan are also large islands with their own unique cultures. But then there are thousands of smaller islands, each with its own culture, language, and identity. If you want to understand how diverse Indonesia really is, look at these numbers. More than 700 languages are spoken here. Over 1,300 ethnic groups live here, and people follow Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, and Buddhism. So how do you hold so many different people together in one nation? Indonesia's leaders came up with an idea, a national slogan, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity in diversity. The message was, yes, we are different, but we will still live as one. The leaders also chose a national language very carefully. Instead of choosing Javanese, the most spoken language, they made Bahasa Indonesia the national language, because it was simpler and easier for everyone to learn. This also avoided giving one ethnic group more power than the others. They made Jakarta the capital. They built roads, schools, and ports across the islands so that people could feel connected to one another. But even with all this effort, keeping everyone united has never been easy. Some regions still want to break away. Aceh in Sumatra tried to become independent. Papua has demanded freedom for a long time. East Timor even fought a war and finally became a separate country in 2002. Indonesia has worked hard to stay united, and yes, it has succeeded. But the struggle to hold the country together continues even today. Running a nation of 17,000 islands is like sailing a boat in a storm, because every boat wants to go in its own direction. It takes patience, vision, and constant effort, and Indonesia does not only face political challenges, it also sits on one of the most dangerous geological zones in the world. Indonesia lies on the Pacific Ring of Fire, a huge belt of volcanoes and earthquakes. Here, there are more than 130 active volcanoes, the highest number in the world. Earthquakes are frequent. So are tsunamis, floods, and landslides. Some of the world's deadliest natural disasters happened here. In 1883, the volcano on Krakatoa Island erupted so violently that its sound was heard nearly 4,800 kilometers away. The eruption triggered a tsunami, killing more than 36,000 people and wiping out entire villages. In 2004, near the coast of Sumatra, a massive earthquake of magnitude 9.1 struck. It triggered a tsunami that killed over 200,000 people across Indonesia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and other countries. It is remembered as one of the deadliest disasters in modern history. Every year, floods and landslides force thousands of people from their homes. And now, another danger is rising. Jakarta, the capital, is slowly sinking. Because of overuse of groundwater and rising sea levels from climate change, some areas of Jakarta are sinking by as much as 25 centimeters each year. To solve this, the government has decided to build a new capital city, named Nusantara, on Borneo Island. This will reduce the burden on Jakarta, but building a city in dense forests will cost billions of dollars and bring a heavy environmental cost. So, nature in Indonesia is a double-edged sword. The same volcanoes that make the soil fertile can suddenly explode. The same seas that connect the islands can suddenly turn violent. The same monsoon rains that feed the forest can suddenly cause devastating floods. For Indonesians, natural disasters have become part of their identity, but geography makes governing even harder. In most countries, cities and villages can be linked by roads, highways, or railways. In Indonesia, the sea is always in the middle. You cannot build a highway between two provinces when there is an ocean between them. Even on the same island, construction can be very difficult. For example, in Papua, there are dense forests and tall mountains. Some villages can only be reached by airplane or after hours of trekking. Many places have no roads at all. On Java, the most populated island, traffic is so bad that it can take 8 or 9 hours to travel just 100 kilometers. Communication is another big problem. On many islands, internet and mobile networks are very limited. Some villages see a doctor only once a month. Children in some places study in schools without electricity. About 73% of Indonesians have internet access, but nearly 70 million people still live without it. This creates a huge gap between big cities and remote islands. Cities like Jakarta, Surabaya, and Medan are well connected and developed. But islands like Nias, Flores, and Buru look as if the government has forgotten them. The government has tried to reduce this gap by building ports, airports, and highways, and by investing billions of dollars to bring internet to remote areas. But reaching every corner of 17,000 islands is an almost impossible task. That is why running Indonesia is not only a political challenge but also a challenge of geography.